The bottom line is, in his position, it never hurts to be a defendant who's crying from the stand. So we have to measure it all out.
You're right, Tamara. I want to thank you so much for being with me this evening. It was an honor. Thank you for your insights. And again, thank you at home for joining me this evening. I'm Chanley Painter. It's been a pleasure. Up next, don't go anywhere. You're going to have closing arguments with Vinnie Politan. He takes a look at the biggest moments from the Hankinson trial and, of course, that defendant on the witness stand. You're watching Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
Attention women, if you or a loved
Thanks for seeing me. I'm glad you scheduled some time.
Teladoc, the right care when you need it most.
Big news in Kern County, California. In a story we profiled in our unsolved case file, the disappearance of the Cal City toddlers Orrin and Orson West has now been solved, according to the DA, as the adoptive parents of the toddlers are under arrest, charged with murder.
They died 3 months before their adoptive parents reported them missing.
In Louisville, Kentucky, in the Breonna Taylor botched raid trial, the defendant takes the stand in his own defense and talks about Breonna Taylor.
I said, "You shot the police." And he said, "I did not shoot the police." And I said, "Well, who did?" And he said, "My girlfriend."
On the docket tonight in Statesboro, Georgia, Marcus Wilson, accused of murder but claiming he shot a 17-year-old girl in self-defense, is in court for an important hearing. We have all the latest.
When those threats of force were not enough, he had the right to use deadly force.
Plus, in Madison County, Kentucky, Shannon Gilday in court charged with a deadly home invasion. Meanwhile, his mom posting that he was obsessed with finding a doomsday bunker for the impending nuclear war, and the home he's accused of invading had an elaborate bunker. Tonight's 13th juror question: do you think 24/7 war coverage can have a dangerous effect on people's mental health? Buckle your seatbelt. This hour of closing arguments starts right now. I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Great to have you aboard. You know, there is no responsibility more awesome than the responsibility of being a parent. And for those of us who have children, we understand that. When you bring life into the world and there's this little human and you now are responsible for everything. You've got to keep that child safe. You've got to keep that child warm. You've got to keep the child fed. And you've got to make sure that child grows and becomes a young adult. And that whole time, you just carry this incredible amount of anxiety and am I doing the right thing? It's tough. It is tough stuff. And we know there's great parts of parenting. The rewards are endless. But that responsibility is real, which is why when I think of parents who have adopted children and think of the added responsibilities that they have and the added challenges that they have, I have so much respect for what adoptive parents do. And when they adopt a child out of foster care, wow, you are an angel. You are amazing. And thank goodness there are people like that are willing to do that and help these children who need everything. Because whatever happened in their lives, they need to be saved from. And that's why the first time I heard the story of Orrin and Orson West, a 3- and 4-year-old. Look at these little, oh goodness, look at these little guys. Are you kidding me? 3 and 4 years old, and there was a story that they were missing. So I said, of course we have to cover this story. Brothers, 3 and 4, both missing. We need to find them and bring them home. Let's cover that story. And we did, and we have been covering that story. And it was one of our unsolved cases here on Closing Arguments. You know, one of the stories that we do again and again and again, looking for tips, looking for clues, looking for answers. Well, tonight, according to the district attorney in Kern County, California, that case has been solved. And it's not what you want to hear tonight. It's not what I wanted to hear. Because the people responsible for the disappearance of those 2 angels were the 2 people who were supposed to save them. Mom and dad. The adoptive mother and father. Those two little guys were having a rough life. They were in foster care. And then two people said, yes, we'll take those children. We'll take care of them. We'll bring them into our family. And now tonight, it's a completely different story because Trezell West and Jacqueline West, mom and dad, are charged with murder. Here's the district attorney.
I have information about Orrin and Orson West, the two young boys who were reported missing from California City 14 months ago. On December 21st of 2020, Orrin was 4 years old and Orson was 3 years old. Their adoptive parents in California City, Trezell West and Jacqueline West, reported to the California City Police Department that the boys had disappeared from their backyard. The California City Police Department began a search for the boys in the area around their home. After a period of time, the FBI joined in the search, as did the California Highway Patrol and search and rescue from the Kern County Sheriff's Department. The community also came out to assist in looking for the boys, but to no avail. They were not located. 1 week later, crucial information came to light that necessitated the involvement of the Bakersfield Police Department and the Kern County District Attorney's Office. Law enforcement worked diligently, hundreds of hours in the next 12 months, looking for the boys. This morning, I'm saddened to announce that the investigation has revealed that Orrin and Orson West are deceased. The investigation has also revealed that they died 3 months before their adoptive parents reported them missing. However, I am pleased to announce that this week, the Kern County Grand Jury indicted Trezell and Jacqueline West, the adopted parents, for the murder of Orrin and Orson West. The indictment charges 5 counts. The first count is murder, charges them both with murder, with the victim being Orrin West. The second count charges murder, with the victim being Orson West. The third count charges felony child abuse against the person of Orrin West. The fourth count charges child abuse against the person of Orson West. And the fifth count charges false report of an emergency. Naturally, the first 2 counts carry the most time in state prison, murder. It is charged as murder in the second degree. That carries 15 years to life, but with 2 victims, the potential penalty or the maximum possible penalty, if convicted, is 30 years to life for each defendant, Trezell and Jacqueline West. However, one of the questions that I'm sure you would like to know is, have the bodies of Orrin and Orson been found? And the answer to that is no, they have not been found. However, I would like to emphasize that the fact that law enforcement have not found their bodies does not preclude a murder prosecution. As a matter of fact, there have been many hundreds of what we call no-body homicides prosecuted across the United States successfully, and even no-body homicides have resulted in murder convictions in Kern County.
So sad. I mean, it's heartbreaking. Everyone was hoping that, you know, the children, best case scenario, were abducted by someone who wanted children and would be raising those little guys as their own. Didn't turn out that way. Let's bring in our think tank tonight. Joining us in Atlanta, Georgia, criminal defense attorney Eklund Mercy. In Los Angeles, California, former federal prosecutor Nima Rahmani. And in Phoenix, Arizona, criminal defense attorney and the attorney who represented Jodi Arias and the author of the book series, which you need to read, Trapped with Ms. Arias. Kirk Nurmi is with us. Great to see everyone tonight. If you don't mind, I'm going to start with Nima. He's in California. He's the former prosecutor here. First thing that stuck out to me, second-degree murder in this case, Nima. Second degree, not first degree. What does that tell you about what prosecutors are dealing with here and what challenges they may have if they've only charged second degree?
An incredibly sad case, Vinny, like you said. I mean, there's nothing worse than a parent killing their own child, and an adopted child, for all intents and purposes, legally is your own child. So I know the biological parents disagree with that. But, you know, we've been tracking this case for a year, and the question we've said is, what took so long? You know, why is the DA not charged this case? Where are these children? And the fact that the parents reported the bodies missing 3 months later, for me, I mean, that is the smoking gun, right? That is the proof of guilt there. And why not first degree? I mean, first degree requires that premeditation. Clearly, there's some cruelty going on because really the DA said child abuse, but it's willful cruelty to a child that we're dealing with here. So there's at least some allegations of physical abuse, I believe, maybe even torture. And again, this is just speculation that resulted in these young children dying. So I don't think they have enough for premeditation, but they certainly have enough to put these two in prison for the rest of their life.
Here's the part that I don't understand about that, though, Nima, and I'll throw this to Kirk, is it's two children, right? So I'm like, you're torturing your child and then the child dies, right? Okay, like I've seen that case, I've covered that case. But this is two children. So I'm wondering under what circumstances could we imagine that you don't plan to kill the two children, but you kill two children? That's the part I don't understand here, Kirk.
Well, you know, Vinny, it's hard to fathom those circumstances, isn't it, when we're talking about children that are 3 or 4 years old. But I think one of the keys that we heard in that press conference out of the district attorney was that they had information related to the idea that these young boys had been killed 3 to 4 months prior to them reporting missing. That tells me that the prosecutors have some pretty specific information. And we could probably envision a scenario where was sadly often the case that these children were probably abused together, perhaps in their room, what have you, and that ultimately led to death. And that goes to what Nima said, they couldn't quite prove the premeditation. But if they were together all the time, sadly abused and tortured together, I think that's why we're seeing second degree. But I think the prosecutors have a pretty strong case if they can pinpoint that point in time when these children were killed.
Yeah, 6 children in the house. I mean, young couple, 6 children, 2 biological. They had 4 adopted children and now had 2, but I believe Family Services has all 4 kids now that are left. Eklund Mercy, I want to ask you about the no body. They have not found these children. But first, I want you to listen to Trezell West with his wife there. This is when everybody was looking for these kids, when they spoke publicly and kind of told their story. Listen.
Tell us what happened the night the kids went missing.
Okay.
From our yard.
Okay. It was cold. I was gonna make a fire. There's a lot of wood in this area right here next to our house. I opened up the back gate. I'm throwing wood, bringing it inside the house. My wife's inside. She was actually wrapping gifts, so we thought it was a good idea that our youngest 2 go outside and play with chalk on the back patio. Do not let them go on the dirt in the backyard. We keep them close. So I was playing with chalk, and I came in the house. I saw them there. I went in the house. I came back out. I didn't see them now. I immediately went back in, asked my wife, did you see the boys? She said, no, they should be outside playing with chalk. I said, well, I didn't see them, so I came back outside and I started searching my backyard. I searched the whole thing. I realized that I left the gate open and I panicked, came inside the house, searched the house, me and my wife. Once that didn't pan out, I got in the van. I looked down the street in both directions. It was getting dark, getting cold, and I got in the van and I hit a bunch of corners. I went down this street. I turned my light on. I searched. I called their names. Talked to a gentleman on the street on the other side over there. He didn't see me. So then I came home and I told my wife we need to call the cops.
All right, Eklund, that's their story, okay?
Yeah.
Let me ask you something. Let me ask you something, though. At the trial, is that the story, or are they going to pull the old Casey Anthony routine where, and now for something completely different in our opening statement that has nothing to do with all the prior statements made by the accused murderers?
Absolutely, and that's their right. But I personally feel like they may have other suspects because as a guardian ad litem, I also did that, and I also represented, children before they were adopted. We saw a lot of situations in which the new families, it's the siblings, it could be other people around the home that have done things. So I don't think it's a slam dunk per se. And if they are protecting somebody, I think that the prosecution should make a lot of more, should make a thorough investigation and really look at how many people were in the home, because we still don't have a body, which will actually help the prosecution if they offer somebody a deal. If they offered one of them a deal, I think that we should all get closure and at the very least be able to find where the children are. So, I think that it's still kind of murky. We don't have any bodies. And even with the information that the prosecution has to prove second-degree murder, I know it's been done before, but it's 2 bodies instead of 1.
Obviously, we're going to continue to follow all the legal steps that are taking place in this case. But join us next hour. We're going to bring in our investigators and dive into the investigation into the deaths and missing children, Orson and Orrin West. In the meantime, the think tank with us the whole hour. When we return, we're going to talk about the case that you're watching on Court TV today, Kentucky versus this man, Brett Hankinson, former police officer, part of that botched raid of Breonna Taylor's apartment. Today, he was talking about Breonna Taylor on the witness stand. We'll tell you exactly what he said. It's a
knew Sergeant Mattingly was down, and I knew they were trying to get to him. And it appeared to me that they were being executed with this rifle.
That's Brett Hankinson inside the courtroom testifying in his own defense today. He's charged in the botched raid at Breonna Taylor's apartment. He didn't shoot Breonna Taylor, but he's been charged with wanton disregard in the way he fired his weapon, and it went into a neighboring apartment that had a young couple with a pregnant woman inside. And he was testifying today in his own defense, and there were a lot of really interesting moments in his testimony. That was one of them where he was showing emotion, believing that his fellow detectives were being executed while they were executing the search warrant. So he started firing his weapon. He also addressed directly Breonna Taylor while he was on the witness stand. Let's take a listen.
Is there anything, Brett, that you feel like you did wrong on March 13th at 3003 Springfield Drive?
Absolutely not.
Why did you do what you did?
To protect myself, and more importantly, and first primary function at that time when I returned fire was to protect the fellow detectives that were stuck in that breezeway.
And did you later learn that you obviously at some point learned that your bullets had gone into an apartment behind Breonna Taylor's apartment?
Correct.
What were your feelings about this entire incident?
Tragedy. It's something that didn't have to happen. And my opinion is that certain actions by... I saw Ms. Napper, Mr. Etherington up here for the first time, and I felt sincere empathy for them. That was something, if my daughter was shot at or bullets came into our house, that would be very concerning, and I apologize to her for that. And Miss Taylor's family, it was just, she didn't need to die that night.
Was not expecting that moment in the courtroom. Let's bring in Court TV crime and justice reporter Joy Lim-Nakrin, who's joining us live tonight from Louisville, Kentucky. Joy, that's his direct examination. How did the cross-examination go?
Yeah, well, on cross-examination, he was pretty consistent in his narrative, even in his statements prior to this trial. One thing that he articulated was just seeing this silhouette that he believed was pointing a gun at fellow officers. He believed it was a threat. That's what he testified today. Let's go ahead and listen to some of that testimony.
What did you see after the door, as you said, swung all the way open? You didn't see Sergeant Mattingly stepping in. What did you see?
I saw darkness, and then I immediately saw a large muzzle flash. I could feel the percussion of a gun, percussion from the discharge of a firearm. And with the illumination of the muzzle flash, I could see I now had a backdrop and a visual of a silhouette of a person in a combat shooting stance here, directed with a gun directed at us directly.
Where were you standing?
Just to the right of this.
I would like you to point with the laser pointer where you were standing when you saw this muzzle flash.
Sure. I was, as Detective Detective Nobles rotated out with the ram, I moved up into this empty void. There was a large void here created by him swinging this ram back and forth, back and forth. So when he did his job on the door and breached it and moved out, I then moved up to here.
So you came out toward the sidewalk then? Is that your testimony?
Yes, ma'am.
What did you do then?
As I made the corner of the building, I had, like I stated before, I had heard the shooting. And then I heard this gunfire intensify to where it would be like a semi-automatic rifle-style sounds. Loud percussion coming out of that breezeway. And like a.
We can look up now at Exhibit 33, please.
And obviously, Vinny, we don't show jurors on camera, but it's the jurors he's actually pointing at when he kind of simulates that gunfire. And if you notice, Barbara Whaley, the lead prosecutor, she kind of promptly turns him back to the exhibit on the screen. And if I had to guess, I'd say it's because the jurors seemed extremely engaged when he was demonstrating that and being very animated during that time.
How about Breonna Taylor's family? Any reaction from them today when their daughter's name came up or when he was demonstrating what was going on?
Yeah, I mean, you know, Breonna Taylor's mom, Tamika Palmer in particular, has been a presence throughout this trial. Today, she looked especially upset and at times really disgusted with the testimony of former Officer Hankison. I could see her shaking her head in disbelief, and I guess disgust really is a good word for it. And, you know, there's been so much scrutiny on her, so much media attention on her. So a group of family and friends sort of surrounded her to create a privacy shield. At one point, as an Associated Press photographer was kind of zooming in on her, one of those supporters threatened to actually break the camera. But, you know, you heard that testimony from former Officer Hankison about Breonna Taylor and how she didn't need to die. Well, shortly after that, the emotions in Tamika Palmer really just seemed to come to a head, and she left court.
Wow. How about tomorrow? What's left?
Yeah, so tomorrow at 9:15, the attorneys will come to the court and they'll meet with the judge and go over jury instructions one last time. The jurors will be back at 9:30 in the morning, and they'll then hear closing arguments. Each side will get about an hour. There's no rebuttal closing for the prosecution in the state of Kentucky, so that last hour or so from each side in closing arguments will be the last that the jury hears from these attorneys before they decide the fate of Brett Hankison.
All right, Joy Lim-Nakrin in Kentucky tonight. Thank you so much. Let's bring back in our think tank, Eklund Mercy, Nima Rahmani, Kirk Nurmi, still with us. Eklund, again, I always see you out of the corner of my eye. I would like to play poker with you because you're easy to read. Tell me your thoughts about the testimony of Brett Hankison.
It's like sad, it's like the audacity. It's so many things wrapped into one. First off, what just bothered me was a former law enforcement. When asked what's most important to protect, he said himself. And of course, the second was his fellow officers, when the answer should have been the community, the citizens, people like Breonna Taylor. So I couldn't even get over that. Then the fact that this officer who has a gun doesn't know the difference between the AR-15 and other weapons is, in the fact that he's there for shooting into another apartment is just appalling. And I can feel Breonna Taylor's mom's, just her disgust with it all and just how tired she is. It's just so upsetting that we're here. And it's not for the people that actually did the murder. It's for somebody who shot in the wrong place. You can't write this stuff down. It's just that ironic. It's just that stupid. I'm sorry.
Kirk Nurmi.
Well, you know, in terms of, I'm going to disagree with Eklund. I thought the testimony came across well just from a trial strategy standpoint. I think earlier on in the trial, we were talking about the bullets and the placards and how could all these bullets be hurled everywhere and all this danger that it caused when we saw the first victim testify early on in the trial. But when we heard from Officer Hankison, or former Detective Hankison, we heard a different side of the story. We really heard a human side of the story. And I would think, and I would disagree with Eklund, I think it makes sense for him to react emotionally and that connection with his fellow officers when they're serving a warrant. We want our officers to be protected. We want our officers to be safe. And in that regard, I think he acquitted himself pretty darn well on the stand, putting his humanity into it to explain why he did what he did.
Nima, we have only about 15 seconds. Go ahead.
Yeah, I respectfully disagree with Eklund and agree with Kirk. I thought he did a great job, and he gave us an explanation that we didn't have before. And jurors love law enforcement, particularly there in Kentucky. Look what happened with Curtis Reeves there in Florida.
Still ahead. On the docket tonight in Statesboro, Georgia, Marcus Wilson, accused of murder but claiming he shot a 17-year-old girl in self-defense, is back in court for an important hearing. We have all the latest.
When those threats of force were not enough, he had a right to use deadly force.
Plus, in Madison County, Kentucky, Shannon Gilday in court charged with a deadly home invasion. Meanwhile, his mom posting that he was obsessed with finding a doomsday bunker for the impending nuclear war. And the home he's accused of invading had an elaborate doomsday bunker. Tonight's 13th juror question: do you think 24/7 war coverage can have a dangerous effect on people's mental health?
If you've been injured in an accident and need money now,
he had a right to use threats of force. He told them to back off, told them to leave them alone, and when those threats of force were not enough, he had a right to use deadly force.
We've got another case involving self-defense, but right now we are pre-trial at a stand your ground hearing. Marcus Wilson, South Georgia, down in Statesboro, Georgia, is accused of murdering a 17-year-old young woman who was in a truck. He was in a car. He shot and fired the weapon. I think that's pretty clear, but he's claiming it is in self-defense. He was standing his ground because he was being attacked by a group of drunk teenagers who were shouting racial slurs and trying to run him and his girlfriend off the road. Today was day one, again, of the Stand Your Ground immunity hearing. Let's take a listen to both sides in their opening statements.
Here's what we believe the facts show. That in the early morning of June the 14th, 2020, there were 5 young adults: Mason Edward Gleason, Luke Henry Conley, Marcy Elizabeth Nagley, Haley L. Hutchinson, and Ashton Robert DeLoach. They were traveling together in one pickup truck. It was a Chevy Silverado. It was elevated. It had a lift kit. It had large tires. It was old and ragged. They had partied in Claxton earlier, going to various places. They had come to Statesboro, continued to party. Before heading back to Claxton, they stopped to use the bathroom at Parker's on Brandon Avenue in Statesboro. And while at Parker's, and this is so important, the evidence will show, they saw 2 Claxton High School students that they knew to be Mary Jane Swanson and Michaela McCain. We're going to hear from them. The party admitted to seeing Swanson and her friends leave Parker's. However, the party of teenagers did not speak to Swanson and her friends, and there's a reason they didn't. Because they were there with black guys. Wilson and Rigdon pulled up at the traffic light where the party, Chevy Silverado black truck, was waiting for the light to change. The party saw the sedan driven by Wilson pull up next to them, and they immediately mistook Rigdon. You're going to see Mary Jane Swanson and Emma Rigdon. Watch when they come in this courtroom. They mistook Emma Rigdon, who was in the passenger seat of Marcus Wilson's car, for Mary Jane Swanson, who was with the black guy earlier, the party, in the Silverado, began hanging out the window and yelling racist remarks, calling Wilson, who they thought was Mary Jane Swanson's boyfriend, and continuing the same taunts they began at the gas station. Your lives don't matter. Instead of backing off, they continued to swerve closer and closer towards Wilson's sedan while threatening, and then the party began to throw what they admitted were objects at Wilson's sedan, beer cans. Fearing for Rigdon's life, fearing for his own life, Wilson made, God forbid we ever are in that position to have to make the split-second decision to fire shots. And as we all know, unbeknownst to both Wilson and Rigdon, during that second set of shots, one of those bullets may have entered the vehicle, may have struck Haley Hutchinson in the back of the head. A reasonable person standing in Mark Wilson's shoes that night could reasonably believe that their life was in danger. And Your Honor, that's what we're going to show in this immunity hearing. We'll show that by more than a preponderance of evidence, but at least a preponderance of evidence. We'd ask that you would grant immunity and forbid the prosecution of Mark Wilson for the offenses alleged in the indictment.
So what Mr. Johnson has just done is given the court a narrative of what he believes the facts are in this case as of today. The narrative has changed in this case multiple times. One of the most important things that came out of that interview that is part of the actual facts is that Emma never heard one single racial slur uttered. But the tragedy of that night is that Haley ended up dead. And she ended up dead at the hands of Mark Wilson because he fired a gun, not once, not twice, but multiple times. And he shot her in the back of the head. And that's how she spent her last minutes, while her friends did take her to the hospital here in Statesboro. Part of the actual facts in this case that are going to come out throughout the next couple of days are that Mr. Wilson didn't call the police. He didn't call any of his family that lives locally, who he had been at their home just a couple hours earlier. One of whom is in law enforcement. We believe that the actual facts, Your Honor, are going to be borne out over the next few days, and we believe after the court hears the actual facts that there will be evidence before the court that would be sufficient so that the court could deny this motion for immunity so that this case could move forward to a trial.
Obviously, two different versions of exactly what happened, but Haley Hutchins was shot and killed, 17 years old, passenger in that Silverado. Let's bring back in the think tank, Eklund Mercy, Nima Rahmani, Kirk Nurmi. Kirk, this is a stand your ground hearing. This is where the judge can take care of it all and just immunize Marcus Wilson. Charge is gone, no civil suit, and he gets out of jail. Your thoughts about this hearing under these alleged facts?
Well, you know, it is kind of unique in the sense that a judge can take complete control of this and dismiss this case. And we saw, when we see some of the witnesses on behalf of the state, how much they equivocated on what was said. You know, they said, oh, was there racial slurs? Maybe. Yeah, they weren't yelled. They might have been said.
Let me ask you that, though. Does it matter? Does it matter? How important is that when it comes to self-defense, or what someone is saying versus what they are doing?
Well, I think it all boils into it, and it boils down to witness credibility, too, because you keep in mind now, you don't have a jury doing this, you have a judge. So you have somebody who's pretty seasoned and will be looking at these equivocating witnesses with a more suspicious eye based on whatever else they say they've done, too, versus opposed to what the defense comes forward with. So I think that makes the defense, and they're going to be doing it on the law. The judge is going to be doing it on the law, not the emotion. So I think when we see witnesses like this and we see a strong defense come out, and maybe we'll see Mr. Wilson offer some testimony, but, you know, that makes it more likely that I think Mr. Wilson has a chance at this hearing.
Nima, multiple shots, didn't call police, and the victim got shot in the back of the head. And she's not driving the Silverado. So is that self-defense? Does that sound like self-defense to you?
Well, I think self-defense is a jury issue, and that's why I don't like standing your ground, and that's why these facts should go to a jury. Obviously, it's a stand your ground state, so we're dealing with this right now. But going back to Kurt's point, I think the racial slurs, if they're made, do matter. This is a black man in the South. I mean, he's being chased by a car full of he's biracial or black, whatever the case may be, of white people. So that absolutely goes to his state of mind and whether he's acting reasonably in using deadly force. Now, was it reasonable to shoot 5 times? Again, that's something I think that should be fleshed out for our jury, but those are very, very relevant facts, in my opinion. And I think Wilson's got a good shot. And for once, I think the shoe's on the other foot here in a stand your ground case.
Eklund Mercy, was his life in jeopardy? Was he in fear of great bodily harm?
Well, the only thing is, like, when you're in that situation, I probably am the only one that has been called the N-word, and since being on court TV have been called it multiple more times. It's different. When you're out in the streets, when either it be young or old, when that happens, when you're really fearing for your life, you don't know if they're playing games. You don't know if they're joking. You have no idea. If they're coming after you, it's I can't even explain to you. You have no idea what you're willing to do, what you want to do, and what you could do. So it's putting yourself in that position. That's why, you know, jury duty is so important. But I do believe that we have this so often, especially in the South. So I do believe that Wilson has a chance, being a black person, having the N-word thrown at me, being in different situations. You really don't know what to do. So I think that he has a chance, and I think that it should be granted.
All right, folks, it's continuing. This hearing will continue tomorrow, March 3rd. We're going to have much more coverage of it tomorrow night. We'll break down the testimony as well. This is an important hearing. The entire case could go away, or Marcus Wilson could be heading off to trial. We shall see. When we come back, it's time to hear from you, our 13th juror, and it's all about the man accused in the home invasion in Kentucky. His mother said he was obsessed with the imminent nuclear attacks, was looking for a bunker. My question to you, this 24/7 war coverage, does it have a negative impact? Could it impact someone like this or someone with mental illness and have a detrimental effect and cause him to do what he's accused of doing? Your verdict when we return.
From business mogul to murder victim.
first-degree Class B felony, criminal mischief first-degree Class B felony, assault first-degree Class B felony, attempted murder 2 counts Class B felonies. I have to enter a not guilty plea for you section for preliminary hearing.
That's Shannon Gilday in court in Madison County, Kentucky, accused in that home invasion. And again, his mom had posted and written that he was obsessed with the imminent nuclear war, and others have talked about he was looking for a bunker, and that home had a doomsday bunker. I asked Dr. Carol Lieberman, psychiatrist, about all of this. Take a listen.
It is most likely that he's having his first break, a schizophrenic first break, where when he hears the news about, the threats of nuclear war and so on, he takes it much more seriously. Perhaps he's hearing voices that are telling him, you have to go find someplace to hide, you have to go find a bunker. Perhaps he's just, it's just the stress of that. And the feeling that he has to do it quickly, like this is imminent. I mean, that's what the mother said, that nuclear war is imminent. He talked about the CIA following him, she said, and so on. So when he saw this house advertised, and it was advertised as the most secure home on the market, he, thought to himself, that's where I need to be. And actually, somebody called in a tip to the police. And they said that his car was missing, and that he showed off this the ad for the house, and he said that he'd kill everybody inside in order to get to the bunker. So when people have some kind of a mental illness, they perceive the 24-hour news cycle a lot more drastically and do a lot more drastic things as a result of it.
Posted all this on social media, getting your take, your reaction. Our 13th juror comment of the day is Uma, who says it could be harmful, meaning the 24-hour news cycle about war, but so many things in life, but so are many things in life. However, there's a button on all devices called power. It gives one the power to control what they see and hear. And if someone is exhibiting signs of mental illness and can't, then it's the obligation of their family to take control and get them some help. Nima Rahmani, you think this is going to be part of this trial? Do you think it's going to be what we're all experiencing now? It may have had some sort of impact on his mental health?
Well, I think it's going to be part of the trial. It's going to be not guilty by reason of insanity. That's the only possible defense here. But really, what's the solution, Vinny? What's happening in the Ukraine is critical. We all need to know about it. And well before this, we're following the doomsday cult couple that thought the world was ending. Mental illness is important. So there's really no easy solution here.
Ekeler Mercer, your thoughts?
I mean, we saw people storm the Capitol. So, and I said it again, because it, like, like the group think, the just how media is just pushing, like, the imminent destruction of the world, how people are digesting this information. We don't know. We don't know what's happening in their minds. But I'm curious to see how this trial is going to go and how the defense is going to present it.
Kirk, you have the last 15 seconds.
We see it in lots of cases, Vinny, over and over again. It's not just about the mental illness, but it's about those around it, the incumbency of them to intervene, to do something. The Crumbleys, the parents of this young man, people have to do something before these tragedies rather than after and blame it on something in the media.
All right, Kirk Nurmi, Nima Rahmani, Ekeler Mercy, thank you all so much. We'll see you very, very soon. Awesome perspective, as always. Coming up next hour, folks, big story tonight out in Kern County, California, the Cal City toddlers. This is a live look out there. We're expecting a vigil tonight for Orrin and Orson West. The DA says their adoptive parents murdered them. We're going to dive into the investigation and get all the latest next, right here on Closing Arguments.
This is exactly why
Big news in Kern County, California. In a story we profiled in our unsolved case file, the disappearance of the Cal City toddlers Orrin and Orson West has now been solved, according to the DA, as the adoptive parents of the toddlers are under arrest, charged with murder.
They died 3 months before their adoptive parents reported them missing.
But still tonight, the bodies of the two brothers have not been recovered. Can prosecutors prove their case and prove that the parents are lying? We investigate.
I went down this street. I turned my light on. I searched. I called their names. I came home and I told my wife we need to call the cops. It's getting dark and I need help.
In Louisville, Kentucky, the officer charged in the botched raid of Breonna Taylor's apartment takes the stand to talk about what happened that night. We get reaction from our own law enforcement experts.
I see the muzzle flash, I get illumination from that muzzle flash, and then I can see a shadowy silhouette of a figure, and I couldn't identify whether it was a male or a female.
And in Atlanta, Georgia, thieves go after a UPS truck. We'll break down the video during crime time.
Hey, this is the Atlanta Police Department coming out! Let me see your hand!
Buckle your seatbelt. This hour of closing arguments starts right now. I'm Vinnie Politan. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. And this is the part of the program where we take a look at unsolved cases from around the country. And when we cover these stories, we hope that they get solved. But there are some times when a case gets solved, it's not the outcome that you want. It's not the good outcome. It's worst case scenario. If it's a murder case that's unsolved, you want to find who's responsible. But when it's a missing persons, you want to find the people. When it's missing children, you absolutely want to find those children. And I want to come here on the air and say, breaking news, this is unbelievable. One of the unsolved cases involving these missing children, and they've been found, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not saying that tonight. I am not saying that tonight. But the case of Orrin and Orson West, 3 and 4 years old, those two little boys that we've been profiling for over a year out of Cal City, California, and Bakersfield, California, were missing children. That's what the case was, missing children. But now the DA says the case has been solved, and as I mentioned, it is worst case scenario. Take a listen.
I have information about Orrin and Orson West, the two young boys who were reported missing from California City 14 months ago. On December 21st of 2020, Orrin was 4 years old, and Orson was 3 years old. Their adoptive parents in California City, Trezell West and Jacqueline West, reported to the California City Police Department that the boys had disappeared from their backyard. The California City Police Department began a search for the boys in the area around their home. After a period of time, the FBI joined in the search, as did the California Highway Patrol and search and rescue from the Kern County Sheriff's Department. The community also came out to assist in looking for the boys, but to no avail. They were not located. 1 week later, crucial information came to light that necessitated the involvement of the Bakersfield Police Department and the Kern County District Attorney's Office. Law enforcement worked diligently, hundreds of hours in the next 12 months, looking for the boys. This morning, I'm saddened to announce that the investigation has revealed that Orrin and Orson West are deceased. The investigation has also revealed that they died 3 months before their adoptive parents reported them missing. However, I am pleased to announce that this week, the Kern County Grand Jury indicted Trezell and Jacqueline West, the adoptive parents, for the murder of Orrin and Orson West. One of the questions that I'm sure you would like to know is, have the bodies of Orrin and Orson been found? And the answer to that is no, they have not been found. However, I would like to emphasize that the fact that law enforcement have not found their bodies does not preclude a murder prosecution. As a matter of fact, there have been many hundreds of what we call no-body homicides prosecuted across the United States successfully, and even no-body homicides have resulted in murder convictions in Kern County.
The indictment itself took approximately 3 months. Over 50 witnesses testified during the course of the indictment. Much of those witnesses' testimony was extremely emotional as it related to this case, but that's to be expected from a case that involves the murder of 2 innocent children.
This is not a resolution in this case, and there will not be a resolution completely in this case until these boys are brought home.
I told you, worst case scenario. So what I want to do here in this next half hour, I want to start in the first half of what we're doing, focus in on what prosecutors talked about today and how investigators got there, and try to dig into some of these facts. Then the second part of what we'll do tonight is take another listen to the story that was given by the now murder defendants, the adoptive parents in this case, Trezell and Jacqueline West. We'll break down their story. But let's start with what the DA is saying, the investigation, what they found out, what they need to find out. Incredible guests tonight. Joining me tonight in Salt Lake City, Utah, private investigator Jason Jensen is with us. In Monroe, North Carolina, death investigator and forensic criminologist Dr. Laura Petler. In Denver, Colorado, a reporter has been covering this case from the start and is now a reporter and anchor with our great affiliate KMGH in Denver. Bayan Wang is back with us. And in Bakersfield, California, a reporter with our other great affiliate KERO in Bakersfield, Vanya Patino is with us as well. Thank you, everyone, for joining us tonight. This was such big news, and we received it last night at the end of the show, and we've been working all day gathering great guests and information tonight. I want to start with Bayan Wang because we've talked about this case in the past. The first thing that jumps out to me was what the DA said, is that they believe this murder took place 3 months before they were reported missing. Bayan, I know you were putting together the timeline of this case. Does that put this family, does that put Orrin and Orson being murdered not in Cal City, but in Bakersfield, California?
Well, Vinny, first of all, as you mentioned in the very beginning of this, there's no good news that comes out of this. This is all incredibly heartbreaking. It's trying to find the tone of moving this forward without getting too pumped of this development. But a lot of people have been waiting for answers, and today I think there was a lot that was revealed, and also more rabbit holes that people are going to go down the path of. Now, to get to your question, yeah, the timing of things is incredibly suspicious. Is it surprising that the DA believes that this crime occurred 3 months before they moved to California City? No, it's not surprising because as we have been reporting, you and I, Vinny, no neighbors in California City have ever seen Orrin or Orson West. And I think this tipped off investigators from the very beginning. And there have been multiple agencies involved in this. I think that one of the biggest pieces of information that came out is from the DA's press conference today is they don't believe that Jacqueline and Trezell West acted alone In fact, if you read the indictment, they believe that both in the second-degree murder counts and the second-degree and the other counts of willful child cruelty had other people involved in it as well. And so one of the great questions the reporter asked was, has any other person been detained or arrested in this case so far? And Kern County DA Cynthia Zimmer was not able to answer that question.
Dr. Laura Pentler, let me ask you, as a death investigator, forensic criminologist, they have not recovered the bodies of these two angels. They have not found Orrin and Orson, but they are convinced that they were murdered 3 months before being reported missing. What type of evidence do you think they have been able to recover here?
When we're talking about a staged homicide like the homicides of Orrin and Orson, in this kind of a case, there's always 3 types of staging that you're looking at. You're looking at linguistic staging, you're looking at visual staging, and you're looking at nonverbal staging. And in this case, we have Trezell and Jacqueline exhibiting behaviors on all 3 spectrums of linguistic, visual, and nonverbal. So the type of evidence that we expect to find from visual staging would be concealing the bodies and concealing evidence, creating evidence, and hiding things. Also planning the way that they dispose of the bodies and the evidence. Also creating the story that they're going to tell. So there's a lot of different ways that they create visual evidence. Then, of course, they create linguistic evidence by giving false statements to police and 911 calls that are misleading. So the purpose of staging is to misdirect the law enforcement investigation, and clearly that's what they tried to do, but it failed miserably because they're now in custody charged with murder.
Vanya Patino, reporter, KERO in Bakersfield. We could put back up those pictures. We had some live pictures from a vigil that's taking place in Bakersfield tonight. Kind of bring us up to speed with the latest. There was this announcement today. Have we heard from the biological family? Have we heard from relatives of the now accused murderers? What else is going on out in Bakersfield, Vanya?
Yeah, so after the press conference ended, we walked outside of the courtroom, and there was the biological aunt and the biological cousin, Rosanna Willis, who has been the one who's giving media a lot of the information that they've been getting, as well as Keisha Stevenson, who's been leading a lot of these vigils and prayers like the one that you're seeing live right there on your screen. Absolutely devastated, just numb. They said, it's something that they had hoped really hard and prayed for that wouldn't be true, is that they were dead. And now just finding out that it was 3 months before they even made that call and put in the missing report made them really angry. They said that word many times, they were just very angry and questioned why would someone ever do something to kids? These are people who seek to get custody of these kids, and now to find out that this is what developments that have been made, they were just very sad. A very emotional response that we got from the family today. But they're still looking for justice, like you said. This is not the end. The bodies have not been found, and I was left with them wanting to give them a proper burial. So they're going to stick fighting and continue to rely on the community and a push from social media and from us, from the media as well, to find those bodies.
Jason Jensen, I want you to take a listen to Chief John Walker from the Cal City Police, who, again, Bion was interviewing during all of this. But I want you to listen to what he said, and I want to get your take on the significance of all of this.
In the initial search of the home, there were scent dogs used, correct?
Correct.
What was the purpose of that?
To locate the children. If they pick up the scent of the kids in the house, once they get the scent of the kids in the house, then they like us, start to widen their search. But the dogs never picked up any scent outside the house.
Can you put that in terms of why that is important to know, that there was no scent of the kids outside of the home?
it doesn't necessarily mean anything in particular, but it does lead us to believe that, the kids did not wander outside of the house.
Where was the last positive ID, hence the last time Orrin and Orson were seen?
To the best of our knowledge?
Yes.
The day that they went missing.
From the parents?
From the parents.
Now, you guys go into the neighborhood to see if anybody else has seen the kids.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about anyone other than the adoptive parents. Was there a last positive ID of Orrin and Orson West anywhere other than California City?
Probably in Bakersfield with the grandmother.
Okay, so then the grandmother confirmed a specific date where she saw the kids last.
Yes.
When was that?
No, I'm not going to disclose that.
Jason Jensen, to me, when Bayan did those interviews and we were able to, that revealed so much to me. What does it reveal to you?
Well, it really reveals very clearly that the children were never in that home. One of the things that search dogs can do is, since their noses are 40,000 times more sensitive than a human nose, they can pick up the scent and trail it from wherever the scent was originated from. So just like we would visually see like footprints outside in the mud or something, the dog can pick up the scent and follow it to its final destination. So with a search dog not picking up the scent of the children at all, that to me means they were never in that home.
Again, there's some shots from the neighbor of that night, and this is the vigil that's going on right now. Do we have audio of that? Okay. We're going to keep our eye on what's going out there. Really a sad night. Incredibly tragic night. Our guests are going to stay with us. When we come back, what I want to do, like I said before, was break down the story of these parents. What did they say? Does their story make any sense? Are there any clues in what they are revealing? We'll talk about that when we come back as we remember Orrin and Orson West.
Have you heard the news? What is the word on the street?
break tonight in Bakersfield, California. This is a vigil in honor of two little boys, Orrin and Orson West, 3 and 4 years old. Today, their parents who adopted them were charged with their murders. But as we sit here tonight, those two boys have still not been recovered. Investigators have not found them. Someone knows something about where they are. But until they come back, that family will not rest, and Orrin and Orson will not rest in peace. This is a case that we were profiling in our unsolved case file segment, and now it is solved according to the district attorney, but there is still the search for those bodies. The parents, what do they have to say about all this? Well, obviously they didn't speak today, but when they first reported their children missing, they did speak publicly. Here's their story.
We just want to thank everyone in the community for all the support we've seen. We've felt so helpless, and seeing everybody out here really looking and helping out really means a lot.
So, tell us what happened the night the kids went missing.
Okay.
From our yard.
Okay. It was cold. I was gonna make a fire. There's a lot of wood in this area right here next to our house. I opened up the back gate. I'm throwing wood, bringing it inside the house. My wife's inside. She was actually wrapping gifts, so we thought it was a good idea that our youngest two go outside and play with chalk on the back patio. Do not let them go on the dirt in the backyard. We keep them close. So I was playing with chalk, and I came in the house. I saw them there. I went in the house. I came back out. I didn't see them now. I immediately went back in, asked my wife, did you see the boys? She said, no, they should be outside playing with chalk. I said, well, I didn't see them, so I came back outside and I started searching my backyard. I searched the whole thing. I realized that I left the gate open, and I panicked, came inside the house, searched the house, me and my wife. Once that didn't pan out, I got in the van. I looked down the street in both directions. It was getting dark, getting cold, and I got in the van and I hit a bunch of corners. I went down this street. I turned my light on. I searched. I called their names. Talked to a gentleman on the street on the other side over there. He didn't see them. So then I came home and I told my wife we need to call the cops. It's getting dark and I need help. We gotta get going. So I called the cops. Cops came. First thing they did was tell us to stay in the house so they can get a hold of us. And they had us just sitting there, and we wanted to keep searching. But everybody came out in droves, and I wanted to thank you guys that night, but we couldn't go outside.
The cops told us the best are out here.
The best are out here searching, and we appreciate it, and nobody ever could tell, we could never talk to anybody, and that was the issue.
We just want to thank everybody.
We really want to thank you guys.
Please, if anybody has seen them, please call, let somebody know.
Call the cops. Call California the City Police Department. Call them and let them know what you've seen, if you see anything. Our boys, they are going to be rambunctious, okay? They are going to be here in this area. And I really would like to go in the houses, but it's not because I want to invade people's privacy. I just want to know if make sure. That's it.
Investigators don't believe them. They just don't. Let's bring back in our guests, Jason Jensen, Dr. Laura Pettler, Bayan Wang, and Vanya Patino still with us. Dr. Laura Pettler, forensic criminologist. I know you've studied this statement that was made by the parents. Your thoughts, your analysis.
So just to, off the top of my head, the very first thing that I want to point out about their statement is that both of them are exhibiting body language consistent with being closed off. Instead of welcoming and matching what they're saying, all of this help and all of this assistance, their bodies are closed off. They're looking down. Their arms are crossed. She's swaying. And it's very, very interesting to analyze just their body language, which falls under the realm of staging we call nonverbal staging. Most communication is nonverbal, and it's involuntary, and they're telling a huge story there. When it comes to their statements, he said, I realized that I left the back gate open, and I panicked, and I came inside the house, searched the house, me and my wife. The chronology is wrong there, Vinny. He shouldn't have said it that way if it was the truth. If it was the truth, he would have said, I realized I left the gate open and I panicked, so I ran outside the gate looking for the boys. He didn't go outside, he went inside. And then he said, I searched the house, me and my wife, instead of me and my wife searched the house. In diagrammatic statement analysis, it's based in grammar, and this statement is reeking of deception. And that is just one sentence of many that I've analyzed throughout his statement to police. So from the linguistic staging standpoint and the statement analysis standpoint, we could go on and on and on, understanding why he chose the words he did, why they use the tone they do, their idiolects, their sentence structure, and all the oral effects of linguistic staging.
Mayan Wang, let me ask you, when these children went missing, what do we know about that day, that night when they went missing? And were there other people around? Were there neighbors? And did anyone else see anything suspicious, like someone coming by in a car? Did police check the neighboring homes?
No, I mean, look, this is a desert city, 14,000 population, but it's not, you know, under a rock. Yeah, this is a neighborhood. There's people out. I mean, while we were there, there's people watering their lawns. There's people going in and out of their garages. Nobody saw anything that day. And you can ask law enforcement about that too. I mean, we've been hearing from people like Dr. Laura talking about the body language, but it's just one of those things where anybody who heard this, you don't need to be an expert. A lot of people had a hunch from the beginning. A lot of this stuff that these two parents were saying was suspicious. And I think we're incredibly fortunate to have experts like Dr. Laura, you know, dissect it like that. But I think one thing that stuck out to the reporters there, and as soon as the parents went inside, we kind of just like stared at each other like, wow, did that just happen? Is when I posed the question, hey, you know, there's people who think you guys may be directly involved in the kids go missing. And instead of the parents saying, you know, getting infuriated that they're being accused of something, they said, oh, hey, you know, they said something along the terms of, we understand why someone might think that. Who says that? I mean, the experts don't need to raise that flag. I mean, who says that? I mean, if someone said I did something to my dog, I would be incredibly infuriated and have some choice words for them, accusing me of something that I didn't do. So I think that was one thing from the very beginning that the entire community kind of clinged on, is the words that are coming out of these parents' mouth are incredibly suspicious. And that's why it's super important that the DA mentioned today that she has direct and circumstantial evidence. They only have one shot at putting these parents away for the charges that they're trying them for. And they've had 14 months to gather that. So the community is hoping that they are darn sure that they have, if not a smoking gun, something close to it. These parents, if they're guilty of all the charges filed against them, they're looking at 30 years to life. There's no closure for the families who are being impacted by this. Absolutely none. I heard some people say, hey, this is the end. They got it. They solved this. Until these parents were found guilty, no one in that family, in the biological family, anyone who loves these kids could really sleep at night without wondering, geez, they don't have the bodies. There's only 2 no-body homicides that Cynthia Zimmer could have thought of at the presser that they successfully won in Kern County. There may be possibly more, but she only cited 2. So, guys, 14 months. And it's been a giant rabbit hole the entire time. And there was a lot of questions that Cynthia Zimmer could not answer today. How do you guys know the boys were killed? How were they killed?
She can't reveal that, but the one thing you did say that I think was significant, Jason Jensen, she said they have direct evidence. In the legal sense, direct evidence, from my perspective, means either a confession, an eyewitness, or a videotape, okay? Someone that saw what happened, someone who was told what was happened by someone who did it, or some surveillance video somewhere. To me, that is the key piece in all of this.
Right, right. And as a former prosecutor, you would know that. The rest of us, like some of the red flags that popped up for me, given the fact that as a private investigator, I'm routinely hired to find missing persons, and given the fact that I have a search dog myself, the things that really stood out to me concerning this couple is the fact that when it came to searching, there were dozens of searches and they didn't participate. There were scores of vigils and they never attended. They acted like they were not a concerned couple. That, to me, as a red flag, would indicate, but they have no desire to look because they already subconsciously know.
Absolutely. And before we go, Vanya Patino from KERO in Bakersfield, what's next for these parents? Are they going to be in a courtroom soon?
Yes, courtroom actually tomorrow at 8:30. Our crews will definitely be there. Hopefully we get some more answers as to all the unanswered questions that we had today from District Attorney Cynthia Simmer.
All right. Incredible job. Thank you, everyone. Jason Jensen, Dr. Laura Petler, Bayan Wang, Vanya Patino. Our coverage of this will continue throughout the week and until we get to that trial, obviously. Appreciate your time tonight. Still ahead. Oh, before that, though, we have an update in another story, folks. Almost missed this, that we've been following very closely here on Court TV. A judge in Michigan, this is a big ruling, has ruled that the accused Oxford school shooter will remain in adult jail for now. There he is. His attorneys had requested that this 15-year-old be transferred to a juvenile facility, but the judge noted that their preferred location, the Children's Village, had 8 escapes or walkaways in just the past 9 months. So no, no, no. The shooter has been isolated now in a holding area since he was arrested for fatally shooting 4 classmates, injuring 7 other people last November. He faces 24 felony charges and life in prison if convicted. So that's the latest there. Still ahead. In Louisville, Kentucky, the officer charged in the botched raid of Breonna Taylor's apartment takes the stand to talk about what happened that night. We take a look with our own law enforcement experts.
I see the muzzle flash, I get illumination from that muzzle flash, and then I can see a shadowy silhouette of a figure, and I couldn't identify whether it was a male or a female.
And in Atlanta, Georgia, thieves go after a UPS truck. We'll break down the video during crime time.
Hey, this is the Atlanta Police Department coming out. Let me see your hand.
Do you use Viagra or Cialis?
It is crime time here on Closing Arguments. Let's bring in tonight's guests. Joining me, former New York City Assistant Commissioner, former NYPD Sergeant Special Assignment, Dr. Keith Taylor. Keith served for 26 years as a public safety professional. He has supervised internal affairs, missing persons, emergency service unit, and Federal Emergency Management Agency urban search and rescue teams. And he is an adjunct assistant professor in the Department of Law, Police Science, and Criminal Justice Administration at John Jay College. Also with us, former gang homicide detective Donald Schweitzer. Donald was a police officer for 10 years. He's investigated gang homicides as a detective, served as a member of the SWAT unit, and worked various narcotics assignments, and then, of course, got the law degree and is practicing law now. Great to have you both here. We are covering the trial of Brett Hankinson, who was part of the botched raid at Breonna Taylor's apartment. He did not shoot Breonna Taylor, but is charged with wanton disregard for firing his weapon wantonly, and the bullets entering the neighbor's apartment where there was a young couple with a pregnant woman. His bullets didn't strike anyone, but he testified today. So I want you both to take a listen to his testimony, and I want to get your reaction, your perspective on what he is talking about, which is the moment that he's firing his weapon. Let's listen.
The muzzle flash was not a muzzle flash that I would commonly identify as a handgun muzzle flash. This was a large fire muzzle flash that I could see directly in front of me. And then the percussion from that muzzle flash, I could feel being, you know, the percussion had nowhere to go. It was straight on at us, and I could feel the percussion. So I could see the muzzle flash, feel the percussion, and with the muzzle flash, it then gave illumination to that hallway. So at that time, I could see can I stand up, Judge?
You may.
So I could see in the hallway, if you or me, I could see in the hallway a subject, and I could not tell if it was a male or a female, in a shooting stance at the ready here, and it lit up that figure. So if I'm you, or I'm where you're at, I see the muzzle flash, I get illumination from that muzzle flash, and then I can see a shadowy silhouette of a figure, and I couldn't identify whether it was a male or a female.
All right, Donald Schweitzer, you were with the SWAT unit. Your thoughts about what we just heard?
I find this really difficult to analyze, Vinny, because, you know, if you take this officer for his word, and I have no reason to doubt him, he was in a desperate, perhaps a panicked attempt to save the lives of other officers. You know, we could armchair quarterback this, but if he really thought that that was the suspect in these conditions and he fired, then I don't see any criminality, possibly, you know, a violation of policy. Maybe it's negligent. You know, it's kind of like taking out a sniper, you know, in a war type of a situation. But in this case, it's a domestic situation where there's a lot of innocent people that could be hit through the walls and everything. So it's just a real tough one for me. I think I have a lot of emotion that goes into this because I could feel for those officers that were in that situation.
Absolutely. Dr. Keith Taylor, your thoughts and analysis of what he's describing, the muzzle flash. He sees the shadowy figure.
In total agreement with what Donald said. And, it is absolutely a reality that at that moment of truth, when you're facing down gunfire, your emotions are going to be, you know, very, very difficult to manage, and you're going to be looking at resolving that situation as quickly as possible. But you're going to be looking at doing it in a way that is safest for all involved. And, you know, your training is going to, or should tell you, to make certain that whatever you do does not unnecessarily endanger innocent persons. And that's where I think the issue comes in.
Let's take a listen to more of Brett Hankinson's testimony from today.
Well, where we're at, and this is trained in the academy, we were in that fatal funnel. It's been, I guess, touched on, but I'll describe more in detail. The fatal funnel is an area you don't want to be in on a search warrant. Okay, you want to get out of that area as quickly as possible. You're trained from day one. Do not stay in the fatal funnel. You have to go through the fatal funnel at some point to make entry into wherever you're getting entry into. So I knew facing that muzzle flash and there's an active shooter directly in front of me, we're not going to continue making entry into that apartment and taking rounds. I spun out to my left, kind of in a similar fashion that Detective Nobles did with the Ram previously, and ran back through the breezeway. I did not want to be in the fatal funnel. I know that people die in the fatal funnel, as it is. Sergeant Madigan is now to my left on the ground. So I want to get out of that fatal funnel as quickly as possible and get to a location where I can return rounds.
What do you know, was Sergeant Mattingly out of commission, or was he returning round?
I don't know.
How about Miles Cosgrove?
At that time, I did not know.
Donald Schweitzer, two parts. I mean, he was getting a little emotional in that moment. He was emotional in other moments today on the stand. Your reaction to that and the concept of this fatal funnel and what's going through your mind at that time?
Yeah, it's a very basic thing that most officers learn in the training academy, and that is that the doorway is a dangerous place. It's the fatal funnel. You don't want to be in there. I think this officer is receiving a lot of criticism because he left. He backed out. And I see no fault with that, Vinny. I think that anybody that's been in a military situation or a SWAT team knows that, you have to take cover. You have to retreat when it's necessary. And for him to back out and go some other place because there's bullets coming his way, I don't see anything wrong with that at all, in spite of the criticism that this officer is receiving.
All right, Donald Schweitzer, Dr. Keith Taylor staying with us. When we come back, down in Atlanta, a UPS truck heist. We've got some video to show you. That's next. It's a trap. Welcome back to our Crime Time segment. Still with us, Dr. Keith Taylor and Donald Schweitzer. Final story tonight comes to us from the APD, Atlanta Police Department, where some suspected thieves were caught stealing from a UPS truck.
Hey, this is the Atlanta Police Department coming out. Let me see your hands. Everybody, let me see your hands. I got one today. I already got him. All right, cool. This is like Christmas for them. Oh,
Unbelievable. Last time I saw a truck heist, I was watching an episode of The Sopranos. What's going on here? How common is this? Dr. Keith Taylor, your thoughts?
Well,
I mean, they're taking the whole UPS truck.
Yeah, and unfortunately, this has become a lot more common as online commerce has increased and as people have ordered more items and these delivery services have expanded, in some cases doubled the amount of deliveries being made. These types of crimes have, the cargo thefts have increased as well. And sometimes it's just straight cargo theft where individuals like this person has some sort of tie to the delivery company, is able to perhaps steal or somehow fool the company into stealing the trucks. But it's also sometimes organized crime groups. And they look for items like medical supplies during the pandemic or during a hurricane. They'll look for building supplies. So companies really have to have their protocols up to speed, have appropriate electronic surveillance and cybersecurity so that important delivery information isn't taken from companies.
Yeah, Donald Schweitzer in that episode of The Sopranos, I think it was a bunch of nice, really nice suits that they got out of the back of the truck, right? Fell right out. Anyhow, when I look at that video, though, they've got to it's almost like opening a door, right? You're opening up the back of that truck. You don't know what's inside there. That's another tense moment.
Yeah, it's scary. It is the new crime of the century, it seems like. And the only way that we are going to combat this is if the private sector has some skin in the game. There's no way that you're going to have enough police officers to really be able to take care of the crazy problem that we have now with people stealing packages off of doorsteps. And now, going into these trains like here in LA in these trucks, Vinny, it's a big problem. It's an expensive problem.
Absolutely. And yeah, the cost gets put onto the consumer who will pay more for the next time you order something. But Dr. Keith Taylor, Donald Schweitzer, always great to have you on the show. We appreciate your time and your insight. We'll see you again real soon.
Thank you, Benny.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, before we go tonight, I want to dedicate the end of this show and have us all remember those two little boys from Cal City, California, Orrin and Orson West. There they are. In the background, you'll hear the voices at a vigil tonight in Bakersfield. Their mother and father have been charged with their murder, but these boys still have not been found. They are still missing tonight. Please keep them in your prayers. I'm Vinny Politan. Thank you for watching. And especially tonight, don't forget to hug the kids.
My Savior, I come when we don't understand. I come.
If you, like many people,